Hey everybody, this is Sean McCan. Today I'm going to talk to you about email efficiency in Outlook. Unfortunately, the beginning of the webinar that we recorded did not actually record, so I'm going to go ahead and record this now, and we're splicing this video onto the webinar. So it's going to seem a little bit different. Becca's not here to introduce me, so hi Becca, good to see you. But thanks for showing up and watching the replay of the webinar, and hopefully this is still a good introduction up to the point that we splice it in. So just a brief introduction about me. My name is Sean McCan. I run the website, theemailcoach.net, or emailcoach.net rather, and I consider myself the email coach. And I work with folks literally all across the world. I had a client in Switzerland. I've got clients here locally in Lafayette, Indiana as well. But my goal is to help people conquer their inboxes and create a healthy inbox system that works for them. I'm also a level 4 Ambassador certified trainer, and that's really related to creative problem solving. But my goal today is to serve Tippy Connect members and anyone else who's watching this webinar and really provide a lot of value. And hopefully these tips, even though we're going to go through a lot of them very quickly, hopefully this can help you get a good start on tackling your inbox. The first thing I wanted to talk about is that email is a human-centered process. And we talked a little bit in the webinar. We did some chatting in Zoom, and we talked about what are some of the routines that you go through on a daily basis. And folks shared some of their routines. And the routine that I shared was that without fail, in the morning, when I go into the shower, I turn the shower on, I go brush my teeth, and then I get into the shower after the water has warmed up. Without fail, that happens every time. That's my routine. That's the habit that I have formed. And so email being a human-centered process, a little bit of that is going to be based around your habit formation. But if we look at, this is called the habit loop, and that's a reference to a book by James Clear, and Atomic Habits is the name of the book. And in that book, he talks about this habit loop. There's cue, there's craving, there's response, and then there's reward. So an example of this habit loop is anytime I walk by the pantry, that's my cue. And then my craving is, oh, wait a minute, I think there's still some Girl Scout cookies in there that are left over. And so my response is to open the pantry, and my reward is a delicious Thin Mint, right? And so that's the habit loop, the cue, craving, response, reward. But when it comes to email, your cue maybe is that ding notification, or maybe your cue is that new notice in your inbox, or maybe your phone vibrates and shows you a notification on your phone, but you're still getting that cue. And your craving, maybe it's not as big of a craving, but the craving is to check the email, right? It's to look at it, it's to respond to it, it's to do something with it. And so that's your response. And then your reward, probably not as awesome as a Thin Mint cookie, but your reward is you accomplish that task. You check something off of your to-do list. You deleted that email out of your inbox, whatever it was, right? And so when we're looking at the habit loop and we're talking about healthy inbox habits, the goal here is for you all to establish a system that works rather than being so reactive to individual emails that come in, but developing a healthy system that works for you so that you don't feel like you're constantly working everyone else's to-do lists, right? So we can talk more about that in a future webinar, but the goal here is healthy inbox habits. Before we get too much into that piece, I want to talk about some email facts, and then after these email facts, we'll transition into the live webinar. But some of these email facts here are that the average office worker sends and receives 121 emails per day. And this statistic is actually from 2017. So I would be willing to guess, since COVID-19 and a lot of folks are working remote, I bet that number has gone up. And the next bullet point there is that 5.4 hours each weekday are spent by the average office worker in their inbox. The University of California, Irvine, did a study, and it said a high amount of email is associated with a high level of stress. I mean, they were hooking people up to heart rate monitors and stuff, and they were identifying that high amounts of email is associated with high levels of stress. And that doesn't surprise me. That's consistent with a lot of the people that I've coached, is that same type of idea. And so some more statistics here at the bottom. 55% of Americans check their email before they go to work. 33% of millennials check their email before they even roll out of bed. And 39% of Americans have admitted to using email while in the restroom. And that number jumps above 80% for the 18 to 29-year-old age group. 39% of Americans are checking their email in the restroom. And that number, maybe surprisingly or unsurprisingly, goes up to 80+% for the age range of 18 to 29. So those are some interesting email facts. And I think that really discusses the prevalence of email and the effects that it's having on our work lives, but also in just our day-to-day life. So in the chat box, what I'd like you to do, I see some of you are chatting already, so thank you for that engagement. What I'd like you to do is share what are some of your frustrations when it comes to email. What are some of the things that you're frustrated with about email? And as you're sharing those out, I'll share some of the frustrations that clients have shared with me over the years. One of these is, I feel like I can't go on vacation. I'll come back to a ton of email and it completely eliminates the relaxation that I had when I was on vacation. Similarly, some have said, well, I have to check my email at night or when I'm sick because the emails will pile up and then I'll feel like I'm totally behind. So those are some frustrations that I've heard about email. Let's look at the chat box here. Fear of missing an important message. Yeah. That there's so many emails. Yeah. Deciding what is important, what to keep and what not to keep. Ooh, limited space storage, but that you need to save attachments and have access to them from multiple devices. Clients wanting responses immediately. Having to dig through emails and then getting all the responses. My coworkers will email me and then 20 minutes later come and ask the same thing. Yeah, I've seen that before. Flagging too many emails so that you have a lot to get back to later. Feeling like you can't disconnect, fear of missing out, or fear of things getting misconstrued. I often take the time to write out really detailed email responses with laying out strategy and then get one sentence responses. Yeah, great. So these are a lot of frustrations that I think a lot of us share. I'm seeing some people saying same in the chat box as well. And so, when it comes to, here's another one I want you to share in the chat box right now. I want you to slightly be distracted for just this moment. If you're willing to share, how many emails are in your work inbox right now? What's the number? Not just the unread emails. How many total emails are in, you could do unread, but how many emails are in your work? You don't want to know. Tyler says you don't want to know. How many emails are in your work inbox right now? 68. 715, 6, I clear it out daily. Great job. Over 40, 234, 76,952. Is that a real number? I think that is a real number. She says, do I win? Over 200, 2,400. So I don't know about you, but when I have a bunch of emails in my inbox, it reminds me of that feeling I had back in college if I had homework that was due in a couple days and I hadn't done it yet, right? It's kind of like this cloud that's looming over your head, or maybe there's this like tightness in your chest, and there's this anxiety about email. So it's no wonder that the University of California, Irvine published that study that said that the higher number of emails is related to higher number of stress, higher amounts of stress. I'm seeing some people in the chat box saying that when emails show up, there's an anxiety with that. And another person commented, someone told me recently that emails are other people's emergencies. I don't know about emergencies, but I think for sure email is often a way that people are delegating tasks, right? So as a result, we are treating those as tasks and then we're responding accordingly. This is all very good dialogue. So thank you for that. What about this one? Has anyone ever said to you, oh, I emailed them and they never got back to me? Or maybe was it said about you, right? Having so many emails in your inbox or other people having so many emails in their inbox can cause that to happen. And if you don't have a healthy email system established for yourself, then you're more likely to miss those emails, especially if you're feeling that, what I call that vacation punishment, right? You're coming back from vacation, all of a sudden you've got hundreds of emails that you've got to respond to. And so I only get anxiety when I'm not sure how to respond or answer the questions. Okay, so some of you are talking about the anxiety just about having a lot of email, and others are talking about the anxiety related to the types of emails that you're receiving. So the first thing I want you to do, if you've got a lot of those emails in your inbox, I want you to think about filing email bankruptcy. Declare email bankruptcy and get rid of all of your old emails. Now, for some of you, you're like, no, I can't do that. That would cause me more anxiety. Or others, maybe you're in an industry that it requires regulations that you hold on to information for a specific period of time. So if that's you, instead of deleting those emails, create an email folder called old inbox. And in that old inbox folder, just drag all emails older than 2 weeks, older than a month. I would say 2 weeks, but know what works best for you, and drag all those emails into an old inbox folder and just start clearing it out. The goal here is to establish a system, not day-to-day organization of every email that's in that folder. You don't want to micromanage your inbox right now. The goal right now is email triage. Clean up that space, clean your desk, make your bed, whatever analogy you want to use, but clean that space out and move on. You can come back to those later using some of the tools that we're going to cover, but let's get your email inbox cleared out so that you can focus on the emails that are coming in and that you want to focus on, rather than all of the emails that are just kind of sitting there nagging you. The other thing I really want to stress is to learn the tools. Gmail is going to have different tools than Outlook, and we're talking about Outlook tools today. And these are a lot of the different tools that are available in Outlook. I'm not going to cover all of these tools, but the more you learn these tools, the better you can establish a system for yourself. Systematizing your inbox for someone who is a photographer might be different than someone who is an accountant, right? Or maybe it's different if you're an entry-level employee than if you're a vice president. So it's really going to depend on your role and your industry, but recognize that the more you learn these tools, the better established your system will be, okay? And the more you'll know how to use these for your system. Chat says, good advice. I have several folders and one of those is labeled old. Yes, good. Okay, still see my screen, great. So 5 tools to get you started when using Microsoft Outlook. And then I want to get to the Q&A. And I'm going to run through these real quick, so you can always reference back to these when you watch the video replay, or you can reach out and contact me directly. But these are 5 tools just to get you started in Outlook with systematizing your inbox. And the first one is categories. So I'm going to drag my email over here. Categories is the first one, and this is under the Home tab. And this category section is right up here at the top. One quick note about these categories: the categories that you establish for your inbox are also going to be the categories that will be established for your calendar. So you can create a lot of categories. I'm going to go to all categories here. So you can create new categories. You can name them. There's a bunch of different colors that you can use. But just realize that if you create these categories in your calendar, it's also going to be categories that will show up in your inbox and vice versa. So these are some of the categories that I have, but the most common ones that I use are information, important, personal, responded, and to do. And really, I'm using to do, responded, and important as the most prevalent categories. So you can create new categories. You can customize which categories have which colors. And then there's a section in your inbox here that says categories. And if you don't have that, you can go into the view section and add it to your inbox. But this category section here just allows me to right click on that and categorize these emails with a right click and then clicking on which category I want. There's also this thing here called set quick click. And that is, what do you want to happen if you just left click that category? For me, the one that I use the most is responded. So if I've responded to an email, hypothetically I responded to this email, I'm just going to click it once and it automatically categorizes it with that quick click. Actually, this email is going to be not class, it's going to be info. So you can set multiple categories if you would like, but I'm just going to categorize this one as info. And we'll come back to that email a little bit later. So that's the first thing, is just using categories to help you visually organize your inbox. The second one are quick steps. This is probably my favorite one by far. Quick steps is a way for you to, in one click, do a bunch of different things to an email. So I'm going to go through the creation of a category here. I'm sorry, of a quick step here, because I want you to see how powerful these can be. Let's say that hypothetically, I wanted to deal with this email later. Purdue for Life brings free online courses. It's an email I received this morning. So if I wanted to put this in my later folder, I don't have a category up here for my later folder. I used to, but I deleted it for this presentation because I want to show you how to create one. So I'm going to go to Manage Quick Steps. And you can go in here and manage all the quick steps that you have, including creating a new one, or straight from this Quick Steps menu, just go to New Quick Step, and I'm going to say Custom, because this is going to allow me to customize what I do with one click with that email. So I'm going to use my later folder. We'll make it a green color. That's fine. And then what do I want to call this? I want to call this my O3 later folder. Now, the reason I number it is because some email clients will alphabetize your folders, and I want these folders to show up first. So that's why I call this my O3 later folder. But this is just the name of it. So if I wanted to, I could just call it later. It doesn't really matter. But the idea here is, what do you want to do with this email with one click? What do you want to do with it? So for me, I'd like to move it to my later folder. I would like to mark it as read so that it doesn't have that nagging unread number there. And maybe I want to, since it's my later folder, maybe I want to categorize it with my to-do category. So with one click, I'm going to move this email to my later folder, mark it as read, and then put it under the to-do category. And every single time I click on this quick step right up here now, it's going to do that for every email that I click on. So I'm going to go to this email here, click on later. It automatically sent it to my later folder. It marked it as read, and it put it under my to-do category, just with one click of the mouse button. So for these up here, you'll see that I've got a bunch of my quick steps, and you can change the order of them. So you'll see that I have a bunch up here. These are all quick steps that if I get an email for something that's related to COVID-19, I just click on that and it goes into my COVID-19 folder. If I get an email that's related to tech or accessing technology resources, I put it in that folder. And I can just one click those emails, mark them as read, and send them to that folder. So that's the quick steps feature. The third one is the search feature. And so I'm going to show you here in my later folder. I've got a lot of emails that I pulled into this folder that are from Farnham Street, which is a newsletter that I subscribe to, and it's called Brain Food. And so for this one, we want to focus on just searching for those Farnham Street newsletters. So up in this search box, you can search in your current folder, or if you wanted to, you could search all of your mailbox, so your inbox and your other folders as well. But if I go into my current folder and I say that I want to search from, I click this from, and I want to say, well, that's from Farnham Street, FS. These are all the emails that are in my current folder from Farnham Street. The other cool thing about this is if you were saying, well, I know it was from that person, but the subject was, it had something about brain food. You can also do a search from somebody and with the subject line. So this search tool is super powerful. One of them, the most common ones that I use is, oh, you know what? I know Tanya sent me that email and it had an attachment with a PowerPoint. So if I just searched from Tanya's email address, and then instead of a subject here, I just said has attachments, then it would pull up all emails from FS that has attachments, or from whoever it's from. The other cool thing about this is when you can select all of these. Check this out. You can select all of these, go back to your home. And now if I wanted to categorize these, mark them as read, and put them in a folder, I can automatically categorize it to all of those emails all at once after I do a search. So now it's automatically categorized all of those emails with to do, it's marked them as read, and it's thrown them in my later folder. So using this in conjunction with the quick steps is super powerful. All right, so if you want to learn all of the other detailed search shortcuts, you can go to this bit.ly link, which is bit.ly/Outlook search shortcuts. And those are all capital Outlook, capital O, capital S, so Outlook search shortcuts. So you can go there and discover more of those search tools. But in the interest of time, we're going to move on to rules. Is it case sensitive? I do believe it is case sensitive. Yes, that bit.ly link. So as far as rules, let's say instead of categorizing these like I have with the quick step, maybe I wanted every Farnham Street email that came in to automatically be put into a separate folder. You can go to rules and then create a rule. I'm actually working offline right now, so I need to go online for just a moment to create a rule. I like going to the advanced options here. And so if I said that, well, any email that has brain food in the subject or the body, you can click on this and customize it. So I'm going to say brain food. And I'm going to remove this one. Okay, so any email that says brain food in the subject or the body, click next. What do I want to do with it? Well, I want to move it to the later folder and assign it to the to-do category. Or maybe do the info category. Right, so the cool, and then the other thing is you can say, well, accept emails that are from me, from another person, contain specific words. The danger here, if you're creating rules, and this is the reason that I don't use rules very much, the danger with rules is that when you create a rule, in this case, it's brain food in the subject or body, not just the subject, but the subject or body. So if Becca were to send me an email and she's like, oh, here's some brain food that I thought you might enjoy, and she sends me a link to a blog article, right? That email is going to be filtered as a result of having the words brain food in the body. So be very careful when you're creating filters, because anything that you set up to have automatically happen is going to happen with that filter. And then lastly, what you can do is you can turn on the rule or just run it this one time. You can run it for the folder that you're in, whether that's your inbox folder. I'm currently in my later folder. I'm not actually going to create this rule, so I'm going to click cancel. But that is how you set up a rule. I don't like using a lot of rules. I prefer to use the quick steps. But for those of you who want to automatically categorize things into folders, the rules tool is a really good tool in Outlook. And then 5, the last one here, so we can get to the Q&A piece, is customizing your views. And so in Outlook here, let me cancel this search. If I'm in my later folder, and I've got a lot of emails in this later folder, right? So first of all, what I want to do is I want to move a bunch of these. But before I move them, this is kind of visually overwhelming, right? This later folder. If I right-click in this section up here and I collapse all the groups, maybe I just want to look at the emails that are from today. That makes things a little visually more appealing. It's easier to digest as I'm processing my emails, or maybe just today and Sunday and maybe last week. So now anything that's in this folder for these 3 days, the rest are still there. They're just collapsed. So you're really customizing that view. Other things that you can do with the view area is, let's say, I'm going to expand all of these back out. Let's say I wanted to sort who it was from. Now I can sort emails that are from a specific person, and I can find them accordingly in that folder, in this specific folder that I'm in. I can also sort by categories. So if these are all the things that I have to do, I can now look at what are the emails that are categorized with to do in this folder. So you can sort by those categories, and just like the date, you can collapse all of those groups and say, well, here's just the emails that I have that are my to-do list. And for me, I actually want to take off the to-do off of those categories, and then boom, now I've only got 3. And those have moved as a none, right? So I'm just going to visually clean this up real quick. I'm going to say, what are the emails that are from Farnham Street? These are going to be all the brain food emails. And what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to archive them with one button. And then now that folder is significantly less busy, less clustered, and I can collapse that. All right. So that's the custom views. You can do more with custom views. One other thing I did want to mention with your custom views here is if you go up to the Views tab and then go over to the reading pane and click Options. This section over on the right-hand side is the reading pane, and that's usually on by default for most people. But you may notice that it automatically marks things as read when you change your selection, or if you've been on that email for several seconds. I don't like that. I want to mark it as read under my terms, not when it automatically does it. So if you go to the View tab and then to the reading pane and then deselect where it says mark as read when viewed for 5 seconds or mark as read when the selection changes, deselect these two. And now if this email is actually an unread email, I can just go in, right click, mark it as read. But you can do it on your terms rather than, I went to the wrong tab here. You can do it under your terms rather than letting the reading pane establish when you've marked it as read or not. So that's something that has been helpful for folks in the past, is messing around in that view section, particularly with that marked as read. All right, last but not least, and then I want to get to the Q&A because that's the most important piece. My simple system followed by some quick tips and then the Q&A. The system that I use is my inbox, the soon box, the later folder. If I've got any emails that I want to follow up or that I've delegated, and then any emails that are related to upcoming meetings, whether they have agendas or whatnot. So this is the system that I use for most of my email. I will file some in other folders, but those are just for reference later on. I want to keep my inbox as clean as possible. And I want to see as few emails in my inbox as possible, so that if I am treating my inbox as a to-do list, that what is in my inbox is very low in number. So my inbox currently has 7, and some of these came in as we were doing the webinar. I have 3 that are in my soon folder. Those are ones that I'm going to get to soon. And then my later folder, that's where I threw a bunch of the Farnham Street emails just as an example. And I've got some, like a webinar that I'd like to go look at. But typically my later folder is just, do I want to be actionable about this later? And is this really a top priority right now? I want to focus my inbox on being a top priority, and then operating out of either my inbox or my soon folder, and that everything else gets filed or deleted or archived because I don't want to see it. I want it out of my inbox so that I can visually be working with a cleaner space. So these are the folders that I use: the inbox, soon, later, follow-up, delegated folder, and then upcoming meetings. And this follow-up delegated folder has actually come in really handy, because when folks maybe haven't responded to your email, and I've said, well, I've responded to that email, but I want to make sure that that task is completed, I can follow up with it later. And people are usually thankful, like, oh, yeah, thanks for following up on that. That escaped me. But if I was serving a student or a client and I'm following up on their behalf, right, they're going to want that information. And so this really allows me to provide better service to my clients and to my students by checking on those emails that I've replied to or delegated or that I need to follow up on. And then the archive and delete. I delete and archive so many emails. Just use the search feature. Forget about everything else. If you need to file it in folders, use the quick steps. But the more you archive and delete, the lower your inbox's number is going to be and the less stress you're going to have. So if you're not sure what to do with it, archive it. If you were like, man, I probably will never need this again, just delete it. Get it out of your inbox. Don't sit there and deliberate whether you're going to do something with it, which leads me to some of my final tips. If you need to, especially in the day and age of doing Zoom calls and live webinars, right? Disable those audio and pop-up notifications. The last thing you want is a pop-up notification distracting you from what you're working on. Or if you're on a webinar and I've got a pop-up email that shows up from my dad that's like, check out this funny picture of a cat, right? And I'm in a professional webinar, you probably don't want that, right? So you want to disable those audio and pop-up notifications, and that's going to help you focus on the tasks at hand. There's also the RAFT method, and if you can't remember RAFT, you can remember the more crude method, which is called the FART method. And the RAFT or FART method is reply, act, file, trash. You can just rearrange the letters if you want. But reply, if you have no place else to start and you feel overwhelmed and you've just sent everything to your old inbox folder and you're like, okay, what do I do with the emails that are in my inbox right now? Figure out, do you want a folder system? Do you want to do archives and power searching? But at the end of the day, do one of these 4 things with the email. Reply to the email, act on the email, whether that's acting on it by sending an email message, acting on it by following up with a client and calling them on the phone. When COVID-19 is over and you're not working remotely as much, maybe you're driving someplace and going to a meeting, or maybe you're acting on it by walking to another space. I find that I don't like responding to emails if I can just walk down the hall and talk to the person. It keeps my inbox a lot cleaner. And typically that face-to-face interaction is more productive because we're not going back and forth about scheduling a meeting or something like that, right? So act physically. If you need to, get up out of your chair and go act on that. File it, whether you're using the quick steps to file, or archive it and then trash it. So if nothing else, remember the raft method. And then lastly, work offline, which you saw I was doing here. And by working offline, it's going to prevent any other emails from coming in so that I can work on my space currently. Once you remove that work offline, and that's under the send and receive tab for most of you, once you remove that work offline, it's a toggle. So if I were to go back online, all of my emails in my outbox are going to be sent simultaneously. And I'm going to be receiving all the emails that have kind of queued up on the server for me. Okay. So that's the final tips that I have. I know I went through this rather quick, but I'm really more interested in getting to the Q&A and helping you all out. So thanks for tolerating me going through this relatively quickly, and hopefully I can provide some more value to you in the Q&A session. If you want to contact me, you can email me, Sean@emailcoach.net. You can go to my website, which is emailcoach.net, or you can reach out to me if you're a Tippy Connect member, or if you're not a Tippy Connect member, you can join Tippy Connect, but you can reach out to me directly via the Tippy Connect Facebook page, and that is an internal page that is only for Tippy Connect members, but you can reach out to me there or send me a Facebook message and we can chat about email. I'm super nerdy. Like, this stresses people out, and I'm like, oh my God, let me help you with your email. I love it. So if I can help in any way, especially for Tippy Connect members, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. I know I learned a whole bunch going through all of this with you. So hopefully I become a Outlook guru master soon, but nobody count on that. So I just want to go through a few things before we jump into Q&A. We do have registration open for our next event or our next webinar. It's in the chat box now. That is email efficiency for Gmail. I know a lot of you guys do use both platforms, so it's another great way to learn some tips and tricks about Gmail. There is the Tippy Connect group that Sean was talking about. If you would need to contact him, that is for Tippy Connect members and Tippy Connect partner employees only. So you do have to be approved to be in that group. But if you're not and you are a Tippy Connect member or a partner employee, please search it on Facebook and join. We post all of our awesome things in there. And then Sean has very gracefully extended this offer to his Outlook Master Course for all Tippy Connect members at free of charge. So if you are a Tippy Connect member and you do want to learn more tips and tricks about Outlook on a one-on-one basis, go ahead and send Sean an email at sean@emailcoach.net confirming that you are a Tippy Connect member and that you would like more information about the one-on-one Outlook Master Course, and then he'll be in touch with you. If you're not a Tippy Connect member, you can always join. It's bit.ly/join TCYP. I'll put that in the chat box as well. We do have about 20 minutes or so for questions. We had 2 come through in the chat, one from Mel and then one from Omar, and then 2 also in the Q&A. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and take this time to type them up in the Q&A portion of the Zoom so that we can answer them for you, or Sean can answer them for you, because I don't know much at all. And I appreciate everyone coming today. Thank you. Sean, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Becca. Okay, so I'm seeing some in the chat box and then some in the Q&A box. So make sure if you have a question, put it in the Q&A box for me so that I can address it and I can see it kind of all in one space, which is that in that Q&A section. So the first one I did see in the chat box here is, do you have a protocol for spam and for phishing? If you could elaborate maybe what you mean by the protocol for spam and phishing. I know that some organizations have the capacity to use like Cisco or other spam or phishing emails. Phishing is typically, I wouldn't say harder to identify. You just have to know what to identify when it comes to phishing emails. The important thing about phishing emails is if you ever get an email and you're not sure about the link, don't click the link ever. And sometimes they'll disguise the link. What you see on the link is not actually the website that it's going to go to. And there's ways using the HTTP protocol to like do a secondary link within a link. So there's some crazy stuff that can be done. If you're ever not sure, and let's say it's about your bank or a credit card, delete the email. In your web browser, manually go to that bank or to that credit card company and then log in manually, and they will typically have notifications internally as opposed to sending you an email. Or call them up manually and say, hey, I got this email about this, I want to make sure that it's legitimate. So recognizing phishing is a little bit of skill and a little bit of practice, but if you're ever not sure, just be safe and don't click on it. Okay. And the other thing about that, since I'm on this subject, don't even click on it to like try and fake them out and like type in random passwords just to waste their time. Because what you're doing is you're confirming that your email address is valid, and then they can sell your email. Oh, this person clicks on links. They'll sell your email to other people that might, on the black market, on the black web, right? So just don't click on them, delete them. And then if you're not sure, then go straight to, that provider that allegedly has sent that email. As far as how to manage those in my inbox, I've got a pretty good filter that filters a lot of those out. But if I am getting, like, there was one that happened, oh gosh, I don't know. It was like a year and a half ago, and it had this really obscure phrase. It wasn't a phrase that anyone would ever use ever. And I think it had something to do with like the Indiana State Fair or something, but it was totally a phishing email. So like, I looked at that specific phrase, and it was being repeatedly sent because people would click on the email, and then everyone in the network would receive the same email because it was just replicating itself, right? And I was tired, and literally there were hundreds of these emails that were being sent and resent because people kept clicking on the thing. So I went in and created a rule for that specific phrase, which was a very obscure phrase that no one would ever use, and made sure that any emails that were coming in about that just went straight to my trash. Again, when you're creating rules, be careful. But if you do have, and in my Gmail course or presentation, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of my favorite Gmail tips and tricks, particularly with your personal inbox. But there is a trick that I use that filters all of the emails that are like my registration emails to a separate label and never hits my inbox, and then I can search for them later. And it doesn't delete them. It's a cool little email hack. So that's hopefully helps you with at least the protocol for spam and phishing. And then there is a feature in Outlook if you need to. You can always like right click, and then there's a mark as junk, and you can like block the sender's domain, but be careful with that. Because if you end up blocking the sender's domain in your junk email options here, you might accidentally block people from your own email domain. You don't want to do that, right? So you can block specific senders, or you can set up junk email options using the right click and then junk email options. So that is one way to tackle that. Okay. Let's see. Next question here. I'm not sure I believe in inbox zero. I agree with you. Why should I go through all that work when the search function works well and I get hundreds of emails every day? If something is important, I can set a reminder. I agree to an extent. For me, it's about the visual appeal, right? Like another example of this is if I'm cooking, it's easier for me to cook if the dishes are done. It's harder for me to cook when there's dishes there, and then I know I'm creating more dishes. So like some of it's a mental thing, and having a clear inbox space for me is super important, because It helps me mentally stay organized, and that's a system that I've established. If you are good with the power searching, yeah, absolutely. Archive everything and then just use the power searching feature, and then you don't have to put them into individual folders. But why would you want them all in your inbox when that's a place where you're receiving them? If I look at it this way, if you had a physical inbox on your desk and people were giving you paper memos like back in the day, right? And they're putting these paper memos on the top of your inbox. That's the next one that comes in and the next one that comes in. You don't want all of your old memos that you've already filed and been done with sitting in your inbox. You don't want 500 different memos stacked up on your inbox, and people come in and you're like, well, they're never going to get to this memo because their inbox is so full. Another thing is, this is more about kind of like the socialization aspect of it. But if you're giving a webinar and your inbox says you've got 30,000 emails and you're like, oh, it's fine, I just power search everything. You get that, but what is the perception that you're giving to others, right? And so that's really more trivial. But for me personally, and again, this is just for me, I want a cleaner inbox. I don't think inbox zero is something that you should be striving for every day necessarily, but I think having a clean space and then having your system for me is to do now, soon, and later. Let's see if I can pull this back up. Yeah. So for me, having a clean space, and just to show you, I'm gonna show you these properties here. So for these properties, if you right click on a folder and go to properties, I don't show the unread items. I show the total number of items that are in that inbox, or in that folder rather. So in this case, it's my inbox. And the reason I want to show the total number of items is because I want to know how many emails are sitting in that folder. So I've got 3 things that are in my to-do folder, and I've got 17 things that are in my later folder. I know I've got 4 things in my upcoming meetings folder. Okay. So for me, I really like having that organization so I can visually see it all. So yes, I do agree with you that inbox zero is a dangerous thing to try and strive for. But similarly, getting really good with the power searching with those search features, I think that that's a good approach, because then you can easily find everything that you're going for. If you're operating primarily out of your inbox or soon, when do you choose to address your later folder? It seems that those have a high chance of getting buried and truly don't want to return to them. So here's what I found about the later folder. So at one point, and for the example here, I put all those Farnham Street emails in my later folder. And so what I've noticed about the later folder is, for me and my system, these are things that I'm not focusing on right now or in the immediate future. So in this email that I've got here, I've got 2 things that I want to do. One is from 3 weeks ago and 2 are from last week. Now, it might be that I'm waiting on someone and it's still a task that I need to follow up on, and I can put that in my follow-up folder. But typically for me, I don't like to put things in my follow-up folder unless I've responded to it and I'm waiting on a response from someone else. So I'll let that one sit in my inbox. Or if it's something that is important and I want to look at that, like this one is soon. So for me, so it's not super top priority. It's not the thing that I'm working on right this moment, but it is something that's more important than things in the later folder. But what I've noticed though, is if I do file things to the later folder, oftentimes they either take care of themselves, they're no longer relevant, or they truly are something that's down the road and of a lesser priority. I've tried a system where I'm like soon, important, soon, a little bit later, a lot later, like it was like a 5-tiered system. And I felt like I was just getting too muddied down with that. So I pared it down to just the inbox where I get the things. And if I'm operating out of the inbox, that's fine. But really, this email that I got last Friday, I can put that in my soon folder. So this is now really more of a repository for me to identify what are the emails that have come in. The soon ones I can get to as my next step. And then the later ones you can get to later or not at all. So to your point, yes, I appreciate what you're saying. Those do have a higher chance of getting buried for sure. Make sure that you're creating a system that works for you. But for me, I'm really operating out of inbox and soon. And if I want to follow up with an email that I've sent, those are the types of things that I want to remember and I don't want to lose at the bottom of my inbox. So great question and comment there. So thank you for that. I'm not a fan of reading and rereading emails. What's the best way to break down lengthy emails so that you're not missing any info or content of the emails? So this goes into like like further down in the iceberg. When we're talking about email efficiency, a lot of that relates to crafting really good emails that are simple to read and easy to respond to. So as far as writing the content, there's a feature that's somebody shared with me about the military. They call it the Bluff, or the bottom line up front. If you've written an entire lengthy email and all of that information is relevant, chances are it's not, by the way. But if all of that information is relevant and you've written a really lengthy email, at the very top, when you're done with the email, type Bluff, bottom line up front, or email overview or recap or whatever. You can recap it at the bottom. But the idea here is, what's the basis of this email? What does it say? Like, what's the short 3-sentence version of what this email is about? Below, you'll find information about new policies related to working remote. Please make sure you're reviewing these in great detail. If you have questions about the policies below, send me an email. Here's my email address. Boom. That's the bottom line up front. And then when they go through the lengthy, detailed email, they already know what they're expecting to read. So that's really more about the crafting side of the email. Obviously, you personally can't create a different way for them to craft their emails. Send them to me and I can teach them how to craft better emails. But I'm a big fan of bullet points. I'm a big fan of shorter emails and shorter paragraphs. And then also things to think about is when you're crafting an email, what is it going to look like on a mobile device? I think over 50% of emails, I remember seeing a statistic, over 50% of emails are read on mobile devices. So if it looks good on my 27-inch monitor, when that gets squished down to a mobile device, that's going to be a real long email, because the word wrap doesn't actually wrap until the end of my large monitor, right? So being conscientious about how long is it, and using bullet points that attract the eye. Something that email marketers use, and this is really more for if you're like selling stuff, or if you want a call to action, is use a PS after your signature. And so if you use that PS immediately after your signature, your eyes are going to go there. And a lot of people are skipping the information that's in the email. They're just glancing at it, or is there a relevant link, or is this even a relevant email? But they see the PS after the signature. And so sometimes right after the signature, if you're looking at more email marketing on the non-office worker side, if maybe you're an entrepreneur or you're working with clients, that PS after the email is a really good way to attract attention. So if you're part of email lists, look for that PS. I'm sure you'll see it a lot because it's a pretty common tactic with email marketing. Go ahead and email me at sean@emailcoach.net if you have specific questions, and I'm happy to help you out. Okay. This might be for another webinar, but my coworkers suggest using tasks for Outlook. Do you use this function? Do you find it helpful? I do not use the function, but you can. So tasks is related to, if you go into the view pane, and this is a separate folder over here. Actually, I'll do it this way. Down here at the bottom, these are your tasks for anything that you've ever flagged ever. And if you right click and you go to Dock the Peak, that's this section over here. And you can look at every single email that you've ever flagged ever. And if you ever use that flag, it's going to add it to the task. So right here, up in the top right-hand corner, if I clear that flag, it's not there now, but if I click on it, it will mark it as being flagged. So I like the flag as just a, hey, give extra attention to this email. You can use these flags and these tasks over here. Type a new task. Finish the webinar. Okay, and so now you've added your own separate task, and you can arrange it by which folder it's in. You can arrange it by the date that you created it, the due date. You can arrange it by categories. So you can use the task list if that works for you. Some people, I've noticed actually a lot of people are using their inbox as a task list. And so if this is a space in Outlook that works for you to better organize your thoughts and your tasks, totally use it. I recommend anything that works well for your system. If it's something that's going to work well for you, definitely use it, but just learn the tools that are within Outlook so that you are comfortable with them and you know what system is working for you. I don't use that, so I'm going to close it. Great question. Task. Okay, great. Got that one. The next one, and I've only got about 3 more minutes left. I use different forms of Outlook. Desktop computer at work, mobile on the phone, and laptop from home using the online version. Yeah, they all look different. Agree. Especially on the phone. Yes. Do the apps you showed today work on all the different forms of Outlook? So yes and no, but mostly yes. Let's see here. I'm not sure if it's going to show up on my video. So like with Outlook, it's not going to show up because of my background. Okay. Basically what I'm trying to show you here is that I have Outlook on my phone and I can see all those folders in the same way that it was before. The soon, the later, the follow-up, the delegated. But I also have other inboxes in Outlook, like my personal email, so I can manage that all from one space. With the online version, you'll notice that the default when you're using Outlook Online is usually reply all. And so that's when you get people that are like, dear everyone, just wanted you to be aware of this policy. And then someone inevitably clicks reply all and they're like, thanks, Nancy. And it's like, you didn't have to reply all to just Nancy. Like we've all seen those kinds of emails, right? It's like, okay, thanks for cluttering up my inbox. I'm a little bit cynical about those, right? But in the reason that happens is because in the online version of Outlook, the default is reply all. And you can change that default instead of reply all to just reply, and then having the reply all as a separate option to do later. Another quick tip about replying to emails, if you're crafting a super important email, maybe it's to your boss or the CEO or a really important client, reply to that email that they sent you immediately. First thing you should do, delete their email from the to box. So if you accidentally send it, you don't send an email that you've not finished drafting. Then go down into your inbox, craft your email, get it precisely worded and nice and everything, and then go back later and then re-add their email to the to function so that you don't actually send the email before it's done and you're like, oh, shoot, didn't mean to do that. I think there's a shortcut key like Shift Enter. Don't try it, but I'm pretty sure that will like send your email. And I've disabled that. I went into my settings and disabled that feature because I don't want to accidentally send an email before I'm done. But the best practice that I've found when you're crafting an email that's super important is just delete who's in the to box and then add it when you're done with the email. So you don't actually send an email out to clients on accident that you haven't finished writing. And then you've got to either try and retract the email and be like, oops, sorry about that. And nobody wants to be in that situation. Oh, it sounds like you couldn't see my screen for the tasks. Let me go quickly over that again, just to make sure you can see what I was talking about. Sorry about that. I'm going to stop, see if I can stop sharing here. Stop sharing and then reshare, just to make sure you could see that task area, because I want to make sure I cover that question for you guys. Can you see my inbox here? Yes. Okay, great. So the tasks feature that I was talking about, if you right click down here on this task function, it might be under the ellipsis depending on how you've got these. But if you right click and go dock the peak, this is your task section over here. You can add new tasks. You can sort them by categories. Anything that you've ever flagged is going to be in there. So if I've got a flag that's in a separate folder that I just flagged and forgot to unflag, which is most of these, then like the preschool concert info for my son, that was in December. I just forgot to unflag it. So you can tell I don't use the tasks, so I can mark it as complete or clear the flag. You can use this task section. I don't personally use it, like I was mentioning, but that is the way to access those tasks straight from within Outlook. So sorry about not being able to show those earlier, but hopefully that gives you a quick rundown. Okay, I don't have time to do this today. Can you show how to disable those pop-up notifications? Send me an email, say, show me how to disable pop-up notifications. And what I'll do for you all is I'll record a video and put it up on YouTube that shows you how to disable those pop-up notifications. I don't have time to cover it for the rest of today's session for the interest of time, but I will cover that. So send me an email, sean@emailcoach.net. And say, hey, Sean, just a reminder, I want to know about that pop-up, disabling the pop-up notifications. And I'll create a YouTube video that shows you how to do that. And then I will reply with the link. That's all I have time for today. Sorry, I think I got most of the questions, but sorry I didn't get to any of the other questions. And sorry there about not being able to see my inbox for the task piece. But hopefully this was tremendous value to you all. Thanks for coming. As you can tell, I'm super passionate about email, which is like a really nerdy thing to be passionate about and to create a website around. But I hope I delivered a lot of value. And if you ever have any questions, connect with me on the Tippy Connect Facebook group or by sending me an email.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you guys all for coming. Stay safe. We'll see you next week. You'll get a follow-up email with all of you. Take care.
Hey everybody, thanks for sticking around, and this is some bonus footage after the webinar has ended. I'm recording this after the fact so that I can answer that question, and I'm just going to tag it on to the end of the webinar here. So in order to disable those notifications, if you go into your file menu, go to options, and then this piece right here that says mail, underneath mail there's a section called message arrival, and it will play a sound and display a desktop alert. If you don't want either of those two things to happen, you can deselect each of those boxes. Me personally, I like to have both the desktop alert and play the sound, but I'm also, as I mentioned in the webinar, I'm also using this feature here where I'm able to work offline. And so by working offline, I just toggle that, and yours won't be here. I've customized my ribbon. Yours will be under the view section. I'm sorry, send and receive section, and then the work offline button is there. But either way, this work offline button is what I like to use to prevent those emails from coming in. So if I'm on a webinar like I was today, typically that's what I'll do is I'll just work offline and I don't have any of those emails that are coming in. So either one works, but if you're the person that definitely is distracted by that and you don't want that audible notification or anything like that, then you can go into your mail section here under your settings, and then under the subsection of message arrival, disable play a sound and disable that display desktop alert. So hopefully you found this valuable as well. And again, feel free to contact me, Sean, SEAN, at emailcoach.net, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you guys may have. Have a great day. See ya.